Good evening, everyone. Hey, it's Sheena with Transformative Healing. Um, Usually I say it's Rise Up from Trauma, but I'm just going to stick with my YouTube name. So, Transformative Healing. How is everyone this evening? How's everyone's week? How did your weekend go? Mine went very well. We had a lot of nice weather, and um, and so I can't complain. Anything like that. So it's good to see you here, and So tonight, we're going to be learning about father and mother wounds and what exactly those are. And if you're new to the channel, I welcome you. Make sure that you like, comment if you would, and subscribe. Share as well. The more people that we can get on, and the more that we can share, the more trauma survivors we can educate and really bring forth the healing that I like to do as an advocate for trauma survivors, to bring forth healing and education. So trauma survivors and those that have dealt with some sort of trauma can understand and know that they can heal from the after effects of trauma. So don't ever let anybody tell you um, that you can heal. So every week, we try to get on here every week, and what we do. If you're new, let me just tell you a little bit about what we do. So every week we get on here and we educate with a trauma topic, and kind of give you kind of the lecture portion of things in a way. And then we answer questions along the way if there's any questions. And then what we try to do is bring in some healing strategies to help uncover some of those things. So if you're one of the ones that don't want to work with a mental health professional, that is perfectly fine. What we like to do is, good evening, Scott. What we like to do is bring in the healing strategy. So, for the people that want to do self-help, or they just want to enhance, if they are working with a mental health professional, the strategies that we give actually helps enhance their healing, which is really good. Next week, before I forget, I was actually going to change my topic for this week, but next week we will be learning about the different, I'm not a therapist, but the different categories of therapy when they talk about the bottom up, bottom down, or top to bottom up, side door, because there's three different ones. But there is a significant difference between all three of them. And so before I get started, let me just say this. If you are somebody that has had repeated trauma, like childhood trauma, a war veteran, if you've had repeated trauma over and over again, not just one circumstance, chances are you have what's called complex trauma, probably developmental trauma too. And so there's certain the side door approach is one of those ones that is really significant for survivors that have complex trauma to really use. And so next week I'll get into that a little bit more. And the reason being is this, and it goes along with a little bit of what we're talking about. My voice is raspy. I've been recording videos most of last week into this week. I did an algorithm, and one of the things that the algorithm with the non-clinical art therapy that I've been doing is marketing and advertising. And what better way to do that than just do my own videos? And so I've been recording, hours of videos, editing, and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like, ugh. So my voice is really raspy. So I apologize. And things like that too. So, and Scott, it is really good to have you. And like I told Sly, if there's anything that I can do, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and things like that too. And so what I do want to say is this: if you do have complex trauma, CPTSD, which it's not in the DSM-5, but it is one of those that they're starting to see more significance in the signs and symptoms correlating with CPTSD. And so what ends up happening is this trauma comes back as an emotion, not a behavior. And so people don't realize that, especially some mental health professionals. And so when they work on treating your mind, it's your body that is actually fueling the mind. For instance, if you have anxiety, what ends up happening with anxiety? You end up, the nervousness starts in your physiological, in your systems. And so what ends up happening is that your heart palpitates, it'll beat really fast. Your hands will sweat, your body will shake. Then what happens? All of that fuels what happens in the psychological. And so you have to work on the body because the trauma becomes trapped and embedded in the cellular level, realistically speaking, before you can work on the mind because it's an emotion. So you have to work on both of them. That's what I do in coaching. I can't stress that enough. I use a very unique approach. And so I actually work both ways. I work in the physiological and the psychological because you have to. You just absolutely have to, because what drives the mind is the body. That's what drives the thoughts, or the negative thinking and things like that too. And so when you're triggered, it's the body's reaction to whatever you're seeing. It's not the mind, it's the body. And so then the body has the thought that comes up. And so when the thought comes up, it's negative thinking, the negative bias. You have the negative inner critic. A lot of times people that have severe anxiety will have catastrophizing, which is a cognitive distortion, which is one of the worst cognitive distortions. So it's the worst case scenario. So when you go in and you do all of this, it's just one of those things like that. It ends up taking over. And so you just have to make sure that you're working on the body. And then slowly start integrating the mind and stuff like that as well. So, all right, I just wanted to kind of share that with you because there are some people that, kind of wonder about things as well, and stuff. So, all right. Um, I don't know, Sly, you're supposed to be the moderator. I don't know if you can, maybe, oh, wait, never mind. Maybe I can. There we go. There was just a comment. Sorry, I was deleting Charles. Sly Fox is supposed to be my moderator, but I don't. He might not have seen it. Oh, you did. Well, I removed it too, so I wasn't sure. Hi, Anna. And so, it is hard. I did a video, and Scott, you'll have to watch it if you haven't already. It's about, with winter coming and things like that, what ends up happening for people that have mental health issues. And in that video that I shared, it really gives some insight into how to help yourself during the winter months when you have mental health struggles. And things like that too. So again, if there's anything that I can do to help you, reach out, and I'll help you the best that I can and things like that too, especially when it comes to anything in the mind and the body. So again, just, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. So tonight, what we're going to talk about, we'll see how long my voice lasts, because I was in the middle of, not in the middle, but I had just finished a videoing, for something else earlier, so my voice is raspy. But tonight what I want to talk about is father wounds. So father wounds and mother wounds, they go hand in hand. So when I talk about father wounds, ultimately it talks about mother wounds as well. So it goes together. And so what father wounds and mother wounds refer to as the emotional, psychological, or relational injuries that occur as a result of a negative or absent experiences with one's mother or father, or a father figure or a motherly figure. And so these wounds can have profound and lasting impact on a person's sense of self, relationships, and overall emotional health. And so what ends up happening is they often stem from behaviors or circumstances such as neglect, criticism, abandonment, emotional unavailability, abuse, neglect during childhood. So if you had a father that was there or a mother that was there and they were neglectful, they criticized you all the time, they would come and go and you wouldn't see them if your needs weren't met. The emotional availability, which means that when you needed something, they weren't there to nurture you. If there was abuse and neglect in your childhood at all, this is going again for mother and father wounds. And so again, what ends up happening is a lot of people don't realize this, is that this does have a negative effect on us. And so, I mean, especially if the parent is in the home, and the parent is criticizing and it's just not present, and there's a lot of abuse and neglect. Absolutely. There's a lot that happens. And so one of the things that ends up happening from having a mother or father wound is low self-worth or self-esteem. So it's a lot of insecurity issues. Um, so you may struggle with feelings of inadequacy or unworthiness because of maybe being criticized. And so that leads to low self-esteem and low self-worth. And so this is where the self-love comes into play. Learning to love yourself, learning to accept where you are, and learning to just take baby steps to recognize these things. Um, Positive affirmations. I know, you can't ultimately heal the mind by doing positive affirmations, but what I do love about them, because again, the trauma sits in the cellular level, but what I do love is that they do act as a pick me up, saying I'm beautiful, I'm worthy, I'm capable. Um, Matter of fact, I was just trying to record a video. That's how I know. Good evening, Michael. Thank you for joining us. I'm strong, I'm brave, I'm resilient, I'm handsome. I believe in myself. Um, I radiate confidence, all of those types of things. And what that ends up doing is when you start saying them out loud, you have to say them out loud because you have like neurotransmitters in your ears. And what that does, I don't know if that's what they're called, but I'm just calling because I can't think of what they're called. But anyway, when you hear them, it goes and the neurotransmitters goes into the brain and it starts changing the neural pathways. And so it starts changing a lot of that negative into positive, and that's really what we need to do. Um, and so positive affirmations, there's a lot of them that you can look on YouTube, on the internet. There is a lot of them. Difficulty with intimacy. Those with father wounds might struggle to form healthy, trusting relationships. What ends up happening is you avoid situations where you become vulnerable because of fear of rejection or abandonment. And so that is a huge thing. Oftentimes, not so much anymore, but this was one of the ones that when I was going through my own trauma healing and going through my complex trauma certification, going through the mother and father wounds, there was just a lot of things that resonated with me. And I was like, whoa. And again, it's not just this, but it's trauma as a whole, the complex trauma, the childhood trauma as a whole. But, I do have a lot of fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, things like that too. And so it goes back to trust issues. It's what it goes back to me, because as childhood trauma survivors, those things were taken from us. And so that we didn't have control of the things that we went through and things like that. And so, um, you know, so it goes back to trust. And that's where the fear of abandonment and rejection comes in, is because of a lot of trust. So I do have a lot of distrust that I'm working through, a lot of fear that I'm working through, which goes back to distrust, because again, I'm fearful to create relationships or to have relationships because I don't know when you're leaving. I don't know when you're going to be like, see ya, and never come back. And so that's something that I'm working through on my own healing journey. Anger or resentment, you have repressed anger. People with unresolved father wounds or mother wounds may harbor anger towards their father or mother, or the world in general, especially if they feel they were denied emotional support, guidance, or love during their formative years. So their formative years would be your developmental trauma, or sorry, not developmental trauma, your developmental years. Developmental trauma is when you've had childhood trauma within your developmental years, and you didn't reach those milestones. Those milestones were hindered. And so anger, resentment because of repressed anger, again, from having unresolved mother or father wounds. Perfectionism or people pleasing. I was a perfectionist. I'm actually a recovering perfectionist, I'm happy to say. I don't know if you ever actually, I'm sure that I get over it, and I have. And let me show you something. When I was writing, if you can see, like, this is super, whoops, I forgot my camera's the other way. This is like super sloppy. And so sorry, my camera, I flipped it and I forgot to flip it back. It's going to drive me nuts because it's good for you guys, but it's opposite for me. And so when I write, Oh yeah, here's another good one. Sorry. As a perfectionist, oh, this is going to drive me nuts. I should have flipped my camera. Sorry. So, as a perfectionist, people that would do this, or they would have like all of this in here, what would end up happening is I would have rewrote this entire page, and it would have looked beautiful. It would have been perfect. But now I'm just because of the healing that I've received from putting the work in myself, that type of thing doesn't bother me. There are certain things that have to be perfect, um, but it's few and far between. So I call myself a recovering perfectionist because that's exactly what I am. And so what perfectionism and people pleasing is that you have to gain approval from a distant or critical father or mother. And so you develop these perfectionism tendencies or people pleasing because you want to fit in. Um, you want people to approve of you and to say like, oh, good job and things like that. Um, and it's kind of to what I want to say. I'm trying to think of the word that I want to say. I guess it kind of boosts you up in a way, I guess, if you want to say. People pleasing is when you do things and, sorry, when you do things because you don't like conflict. And so if we were going out and I really wanted to do something and you wanted to do something, and I was afraid to speak up because I was afraid if I said, hey, I want to go to the movies, I don't want to go shopping, I'd be afraid that there would be some sort of, um, not really an argument, but you would say, no, I really want to go shopping. Meanwhile, I want to go to the movie. And so, I would just keep my mouth shut. So just so, there was um, nothing happening or anything like that. And so that's what people pleasers do. They don't like confrontation. And so sometimes I guess in a way I was a people pleaser because I didn't like confrontation. Now um, I try to keep my mouth shut as much as I can and until a situation arises. But you know, sometimes it's okay to speak up, but that's one of those things that, perfectionism and people pleasing is another one of the after effects. It's an after effect of trauma too. And so it goes, so as a whole, again, as a collective whole, it doesn't just mean a mother or a father wound. It could be collectively trauma as a whole as well. Difficulty with authority. Um, and so this is like it's hard to trust authoritative figures. So authority figures would be like your parents, obviously, but it could be the police, it could be principal, teachers, anything along those lines, bosses, partners, things like that. You just have trouble um, dealing, or it puts a strain on the relationship when you have difficulty with this. Um, I think you just feel inadequate because there was really nobody there to give you the proper like kind of maybe the proper upbringing or the proper ways on how to deal with authority. And so there really wasn't anybody there to help you. And so you just kind of go by the seat of your pants, and then boom, you end up having difficulty with authority. So what did Sly say? Yeah. Until I ask you where you want to go for dinner, you say, I don't care. And I say, how about there? And you say, oh, yeah, I don't really want that. Well, yeah, we'll see. Because I'm learning. I used to just be like, oh, yeah, let's go. Well, now I'm just like, that doesn't sound good. So, yeah. But see, in this scenario, people pleaser because they don't like arguments or anything like that. Um, they don't really like the attention on them. So in this scenario, they would have just went along wherever. Just say Sly would have said, "Let's go to Mexican," and they didn't want Mexican; they wanted Burger King. But they wouldn't say anything about Burger King. They would just go to Mexican, and then they'd rant about it later on because they feel like they didn't have their voice of choice when in fact It's just a part of who they are because they don't like confrontation. That's what it goes down to. So that was a good one. um, Self-sabotaging or an ability to thrive. This is the fear of success. And so if nobody was in the home, a mother or father figure to show you how to be successful, how to be a man, how to be a woman, how to guide you, how to model, and just somebody to be there to help you to see your full potential. What ends up happening is unfortunately we end up self-sabotaging and the inability to thrive. And so we become fearful of what is next, the fear of success. And so we just feel like we're not deserving of anything. We're not deserving of success. We're not deserving to thrive. We're not deserving to go above and beyond. And so that kind of stems back to the anterior cingulate cortex, which is a part of the prefrontal cortex. That's kind of where this portion comes from. That part of the brain with part of the brain in the prefrontal cortex, it's in the neocortex. What ends up happening is when the prefrontal cortex is not online, the neocortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, when that is not online and it's kind of, I don't want to use the word damage, but I guess in a way, I can't think of another word to say. It's not really damaged, but maybe it's not fully developed or there's something going on there. But what ends up happening with childhood trauma survivors, they end up having, it's that portion of the brain that causes the inability to thrive, the lack of. So if you know somebody that has, maybe they're young, maybe they're, early 30s, and you notice that maybe they've had 20 jobs and you're like, man, what is going on? Or, you notice that they work, but when they come home and they don't do anything, or they work and they just have a lack of, you feel like they're lazy or things like that, and they just don't want to get things done. It doesn't mean that they're lazy. It just means maybe that part of the brain just isn't developed, or it's just not working. It's not functioning at the full capacity. And so the anterior cingulate cortex really has a huge role in playing with a lot of people that overshare with lacking. That looks like laziness with in fact it's not. But the prefrontal cortex and the neocortex, they go hand in hand when it comes to logical thinking, executive functioning, and all of those things. You struggle with being masculine or feminine, and so it goes back for men, like unresolved father wounds can manifest as confusion about masculine self-worth or an inability to express vulnerability. And for women, it may impact how they view men or their sense of their own value and self-empowerment, and vice versa. And so, you may view, if you're a man, you may view a woman a different way, and a woman may view a man a different way. And so that's why it's super important. And I know, back in the day when parents growing up, maybe in the 40s and 50s, coming into the intergenerational trauma of things, the everything passed down from generation to generation. What ends up happening is that our parents, chances are, they didn't know how to cope, so they did the best that to their ability. And so unfortunately, there were some things that took place. And I always say that, my parents, now that I realize, what ended up happening was my parents did try their best, and they were hurting and didn't realize what was going on. And so unfortunately, they inflicted their hurt and their pain onto us kids. And so when a mother or a father is absent, the mother can raise a child, and the father can raise a child without the mother, vice versa. But basically what this is saying is you really need to have a mother and father. Maybe if they're separated, divorced, whatever, that's fine. But you should always have some sort of father figure, mother figure around to help you develop the skills that you need, or anything like this. And so let me go on and look at, let me see. So with the mother wounds, I have all my little paperwork here. So sorry. So for the mother wounds, some of the thing, and it's the same thing. So it goes back to both mother wounds and father wounds. If you struggle to speak your truth with love, um, and so that means you need to go back and you need to be to learn compassion. So self-compassion, self-respect. To learn to love yourself, value yourself. What is your worth? And when you start doing that, it really starts changing about who you are, who you are on this recovery journey, who you are. That was, I believe, one of probably the hardest things for me to do was, to learn to love myself and to love myself wholeheartedly. Because if I couldn't love myself, how could I love other people? And so for the longest time, I loved my kids, but ultimately, did I love my kids? Yes, I loved my kids, but now I have a new profound love for my kids now that I found my own love. So now I'm able to love them in a deeper capacity than I was before. So just make sure that you learn to love yourself. If you're not there as far as loving yourself, more self-compassion, treat yourself like you would treat a friend. Talk to yourself like you would a friend. You wouldn't tell a friend that they were ugly or stupid or whatever. So don't tell yourself those things. You carry shame and guilt. You feel bad. It's not yours to carry. You struggle to set healthy boundaries. And so healthy boundaries is a huge thing. Healthy boundaries goes back to people pleasing. It goes back to the, if you don't have healthy boundaries, people pleasing. When you set healthy boundaries, it helps. So that's where you're learning to love yourself and you have self-respect, that you're not letting anybody else spew any of their hate, any of their other stuff onto you, that you can put your hands up or you can say whatever, be polite about it if you can, but this is my boundary and you're not going to cross it. I'm not going to allow you to talk to me that way. I don't deserve that. Those types of things, which is huge. Trying to think of what making sure I got all of my stuff here to kind of go through. And so healing the wounds, the first step is becoming aware of the wounds. So if you go through and you're looking and you're going, some of those resonate, and you had an absent mother, an absent father, you may have a father or a mother wound. And so it's really good to really look at it, and then maybe, kind of, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's just helping you to develop skills to help you as well, which is huge. So it's really about awareness, grieving, healing your inner child, and fostering the mother and father of who you, like mother and father of, you are, and things like that. And so the awareness piece, again, is really being aware of what's going on and picking up as far as, the signs and symptoms that we discussed. It's picking up and seeing the correlation. Grieving, it's finding the healthy outlets for expressing our grief, such as counseling, art, or journaling, or coaching. I'm going to throw that in there as well. And what I love about art is the non-clinical art therapy that I do. I can't say enough about it, but it's really going back in the past without reliving the past. And the only way to overcome trauma is heal from it is to rewrite the narrative, which means you go in and you start repairing and rewiring your neural pathways in the subconscious. Well, there's only a couple ways that you can really tap into the subconscious, and I won't name the other ways, but I will name the safe and healthy way that I use, and it's the non-clinical art therapy. And so we use an 8-step algorithm. So we work on the unconscious, the conscious, and the subconscious, the unconscious, and the conscious. Yeah, see, yeah, try saying those three at the same time. And so it's going from repairing inside the brain. And it's, so what I always tell people, it's healing the past without reliving the past. So we don't even have to talk about your past. We literally just have a release, a topic, whatever you want to release, and we just start working on that there. And I ask you questions. It's been a beautiful thing for me over, I've been using it since June. So it's really been an amazing healing strategy that I have used. Hi, Heather. Thanks for being here. Healing your inner child. So the inner child is what carries the wounds of our childhood. And so you might end up having some childlike characteristics within you. And so those are the inner children that are longing for the love, the nurturing, the caring, letting you know that things are going to be okay. That's what those inner children are looking for. Um, they're looking for the unconditional love, the positive self-talk. Even if you give them a warm hug, write a letter to your inner children, letting them know that it wasn't their fault, and things like that, and just kind of giving them the love that they need, which is huge because that shows them that it's kind of like your adult self is talking to your younger self. That's pretty much what it is. But we have inner children, and at each stage, and the inner children are parts of us. They're parts within us that live within us, and each one of them, they need a certain thing. And so it was interesting because I was sitting there saying, I said, some people talk about parts, and I'm like, I do have a part. I'm thinking she's about 16, and at that 16 stage is when I was leaving my home after enduring trauma for 11 years, probably longer, but I remember 11 years. And so that 16-year-old was very rebellious. And that 16-year-old wants to scream and shout and cuss and everything else. And so I have to calm her down, and just let her know that things are going to be okay. And so I talk to her. But what's interesting is some people have several. And so I'm not saying this to be a smart aleck, but I was sitting there saying, I was like, oh my goodness, is that like having like schizophrenic or whatever, where you have multiple personality disorder, where you have all of these personalities? And so I was just like, well, that's kind of what it is, but it's really not. But that was just the thing that came to my mind, like, wow, like you have all these inner children. So they are, it's all you. So it's not different personalities or anything like that. It's all you, but it's you in your childhood, at different stages in your childhood journey, going through your childhood trauma, where that child at that age needed something. So your inner child may come up at, 8 years old, 4 years old, 10 years old. Mine comes up at 16 all the time. And so I have to kind of work with her and stuff, because I'm like, yeah, I can't be throwing a fit I could at 16, throwing a fit and things like that. But I try to calm her down. And so it's my adult self talking to my 16-year-old self, telling her things that I know now. And so that's how you would start healing your inner child. And I am going to start doing a drawing here within the next few weeks about inner child healing through the non-clinical art therapy. So if that's something that you want to do, just let me know. And then again, grieving. Oh yeah, we talked about that one. Sorry. Fostering the mother or father that you are. Just making sure that you're gentle with yourself, letting go of any internalized rejections or expectations, that you're feeling or anything like that. Just be the best mom, the best dad that you can be. Show up, and try to present, uh, what do I want to say? I can't think of what the word I want to say. I want to say keep on a schedule, but that's not the word I want to use. Consistency, being consistent in the life of a child, or things like that too. And if you're grown and you've had mother or father wounds, it's just, learning to heal again, self-compassion, self-love. Those are your biggest things. Realizing that it wasn't your fault, using a lot of self-empowerment, and just, looking at it and saying it wasn't me, it was them. And then when you reconnect to your inner child and you're working through the feelings of the abandonment, the rejection, and the inadequacy, that can help you on your discovery journey again. And that's really how we start healing because it goes back to a lot of, again, goes back to the inner child and things like that too. Another thing you want to do is embrace your inner strengths and things like that too. So those are some other things that you really want to do. But ultimately, it does go back to self-awareness, self-compassion, working with a trauma-informed coach or mental health professional, learning to reframe your old narratives. And so instead of saying, something negative pops up, you reframe that with something positive. I'm ugly. No, you would say I'm beautiful. I'm fat. You could say, no, I'm not. I'm stupid. I'm smart. I'm unworthy. You're very worthy. And so when you start counteracting, and it's cognitive restructuring. And so when you start reframing all of those old narratives that come up in your brain, and so even if today, even if you don't have a mother or father wound, but you have a negative, like the negative bias, cognitive distortions, or you have the negative mindset, reframing old narratives and really using the cognitive restructuring. And so it's going back in and using taking that negative and reframing it into something positive. I'm not worthy of love. I'm very worthy of love. I'm not capable of doing this. I'm very capable of doing this. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Let me see. I'm trying to think. Like I radiate disgust. You could say I radiate love. I radiate confidence. So do you see so what you're doing is when that pops up, the more that you do this, what happens is when that thought pops up, the more that you do this is when you do the reframing and you do the restructuring, your brain is automatically going to come to when you say, even in your own mind, and you're like, oh, I'm stupid. Your brain's going to say, you're smart. You just have to give yourself time. That's where you want to be. I dealt with cognitive distortions for a very, very long time. If you have my book, if you don't, it's on Amazon. It's called In the Mind, Trauma to Transformation. And so it's a complete self-help workbook. It details all about complex trauma, developmental trauma, cognitive distortions, how to retrain your brain, all of that stuff. There's a lot of movement. So it works on the physiological and the psychological. And so the reason that the workbook, I wrote it was because here I thought maybe I was the only one dealing with cognitive distortions, but realistically speaking, I knew that I wasn't. But I knew that if I was, how many other people were, but just didn't say anything because I lived with them for many, many years. A lot of the, it's not that I had this suicidal ideation by any means, but I had a lot of the negative thinking that came with a lot of impulse. Luckily, I had worked through my impulse, so I didn't act on the impulse. But it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of restructuring to overcome cognitive distortion, especially when you have a catastrophizing mindset. And I've said this repeatedly in other videos. When you have a thought, I would rather have a thought than I would to have a mind that plays a movie. And if you don't know what that is, it's called imagery. Oh, it's in my book, imagery something. Oh, I can't think what it is. But anyway, so my brain is, I don't want to say it's abnormal, but to me it's abnormal because I don't have thoughts. I have pictures. And so so I do get thoughts periodically, don't get me wrong, but if my mind says that I'm fat, because that's something that I dealt with, my whole life being called that. And so I don't say that I mean, every once in a while I'll get down on myself and say it, but what ends up happening is my mind won't say it. It'll show me a picture of me like a balloon. Does that make sense? Like I'm very large. And so the imagery portion of it is harder to overcome than the actual cognitive thinking, the thought process. So mind plays like a movie. And so it's just like a movie in my mind of worst case scenario, and it sucks. It's not even words, it's just a movie. And so I was able to overcome that by using the cognitive restructuring, because I would learn to stop the movie and refocus on something, kind of like what we call them glimmers. And so that's what I was able to do. So again, I just wanted to tell you about the reframing the old narratives and dealing with cognitive restructuring and things like that. And so again, there's so many other things that you can do for healing as well. And then again, reconnecting, I can't stress this enough, with your inner child and things like that too. So do we have any questions for me? So let me ask you some questions. I'll ask you, these are some journal prompts that I use in my session, but I'm going to kind of share with you so you can kind of get an understanding to help you uncover mother or father wounds and things like that. So let me just ask you, imagine your mother or your father were standing in front of you. How does that make you feel? How do you want to feel instead? So these are journal prompts. You don't have to write them down, but just to kind of give you an idea of some thinking. Do you believe what he or she thinks or says about you is true? In what ways has your mother or father made you responsible for his or her feelings? What do you need from your mother or father that you didn't get? What negative thoughts or beliefs you have about your needs and wants? So what negative thoughts or beliefs do you have surrounding your needs and wants? And so mother wounds and father wounds go hand in hand, but I do want to read this as far as some other this is just for mother wounds. Actually, I guess it could go both. I'll just, so then it'll give you another thing. Shrinking yourself to be loved, sense that you are too much or not enough, lack of love for your own body, anxiety, depression, eating disorders or addiction, avoiding conflict to keep the peace, struggling to make and maintain boundaries, writing off your pain as not that bad, feeling responsible for other people's happiness. So this kind of sums up everything we talked about and things like that. So again, if you're dealing with a mother or father wound, I'd be more than happy to help you in any way I can, or reach out to a mental health professional to kind of help you and things like that too. So do we have any questions at all? So for those of you, if you're new here, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody that's here week after week. I certainly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are new, if you could like, subscribe, and share the video. Our goal is to be able to reach out into the trauma community and educate and bring truth to trauma survivors on their healing journeys and things like that too. If you have been here for a while, I appreciate you as well. If you could like the video, and if you could share it, that would be amazing for me as well, because again, there's other people out there that need to see these videos, because these are topics that are not talked about, a lot, because, the trauma topics, there are so many of them, it's very broad. And so there's so many of them, we can't narrow them down. So week after week, we try to, indulge and dig deep into some of the other ones. And so next week, we'll be talking about all the different approaches. There's the bottom up, top down, and side door, and why it is very crucial for complex trauma survivors, complex CPTSD, why it's very critical and very crucial for them to use side door modalities. It's kind of explained in the forefront beginning of the video, sorry. But we will talk about all three of those together, and what each one of them, what they do, why they work for some, why they don't work for others. Again, if you have CPTSD, I have some other videos that I created. There's one I just created about EMDR. And I will have that up there, why EMDR does not work for clients that have CPTSD. I'm hoping to have that up this week. I was just thinking, I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I did have that one up, but I don't think I have it up yet. So I do have some new videos I will be releasing this week. And so thank you, everybody, for being here. I will get everything done for next week. So just remember that we do this every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you'd like to be a guest, you're more than welcome. Reach out to me. I'm always looking for trauma survivors to be a guest on my channel. You don't have to talk about anything to do with your trauma. It's just to help, engage the community, let them know that, what, we don't stand alone, and neither do they. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. I truly appreciate it. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you again next week. So thanks, everyone. Have a good night.